What's up, everybody? I'm Clayton. Welcome back to Ages of Film. And as you can tell by the title, we've got a big ranking to do today. I'm excited about this one. It's going to be a long video, obviously, because there's a lot of movies that we're going to be ranking today. But we are ranking we're ranking all the movies from 10 action franchises. So this is 10 action franchises ranked agent edition. So all these action franchises involve a special agent of some kind, whether that's a detective, a CI agent, an MI agent, whatever it may be. This is agent edition. So 10 different agent action franchises. We're ranking all the movies here. So been building for this one, been going back and watching a lot of these movies in preparation for this ranking, and I've been excited to do this. I plan on doing some more of these in the future with other genres, and I might come back to the action genre as well with another action ranking of fighting action franchises. So, like martial arts type of fighting type action movie franchises. I might come back and do a fighting edition of this. But this is 10 action franchises, agent edition ranked. Here we go. But before we get into it, I just want to say what's up to any new subscribers I have. Thank you very much for being here, for hitting that subscribe button, joining the pack. Greatly appreciate it. Means a lot. Also, while you're here, go ahead and hit that like button. It's a good way to help out the channel. And if you're new to the channel and you haven't subscribed already and you're enjoying the content, do yourself a favor and hit that subscribe button. It's another way to help out the channel and show a little support. So I greatly appreciate it. Love all you guys, and thank you so much for being here. All right, so getting into this video, just as a disclaimer and a reminder, this is just my opinion on these movies. There's no need to be upset or offended by any ranking in this video. If you disagree, if you would rank them differently, that's fine. That's totally cool. Let me know in the comment section how you would rank these movies. Or if you don't want to do all the movies, because there's a lot, you can just do the franchises. Just rank the 10 different franchises collectively, how you would rank the franchises. So, yeah, the 10 franchises, let you guys know the 10 franchises that we're going to be ranking in this video are, we got Die Hard. We have, so the Die Hard franchise, there's 5 movies. We have the Mission Impossible franchise, which has 7. We have the Lethal Weapon franchise, which has 4. We have the Bourne franchise, Jason Bourne, well, the Bourne franchise in general, has 5. We have the Daniel Craig Bond movies, 007 movies, Daniel Craig franchise. So there's 5 in that one. We have Taken, which has 3. We have Bad Boys, which has 4 movies now. The 4th one is out in theaters currently. We have the Fallen franchise, so that has 3. Olympus Has Fallen, London Has Fallen, and Angel Has Fallen. So 3 in that franchise. That's 8. And then we have John Wick franchise, gives us 9. That has 4 in that one as well. And then the Rambo franchise, which also has 5. So those are the 10 franchises that we are ranking here. That gives us 44 movies in total that we're going to be ranking from worst to best. As always, let's go ahead and get into it. So, starting at the bottom with number 44. And there's only a few of these movies that I think that I would say are not good movies, that I would say were kind of bad is kind of a hard word to use, but the couple on the lowest end are 2-star movies, so they're not very good. But my least favorite, or the least best of all of these, in my opinion, number 44, I have A Good Day to Die Hard. This was the 5th installment in the Die Hard franchise and the last installment in this franchise. I think that they dropped the ball here. I think they got away from what made this franchise work, what made this franchise good. When you watch John McClane in this movie, he doesn't really resemble the John McClane from the prior movies. I think the CGI, especially in that third act, is way overused and doesn't really look all that great, in my opinion. I don't think the dialogue was well written. There's way too much filler. There's about a 15-minute car chase in this movie that is 15 minutes too long, in my opinion. It's just filler. It's not doing anything for the story. It's not advancing. There's no movement with it. It's just there. We're not learning anything. It's not developing anything with the story. It's just 15 minutes of just the car chase. And yeah, it just a lot of filler in this movie. So not very good. 2-star movie. It's my least favorite of all these films, and probably not a movie that I would ever go back to again. So that's my number 44. Coming in at number 43, we have Mission Impossible 2, the worst of the Mission Impossible movies, in my opinion. Again, a 2-star movie here as well. I think that coming off the backs of the first Mission Impossible movie, which was actually pretty good, I think this one tried to do too much. It felt very crowded. It still, when I come to this movie, it feels very crowded. It feels like there's too much things, too much that they're trying to cram into this story, into the script, into this movie, and it quite frankly doesn't need to be there. We have this love interest between Ethan and this girl who is very forgettable. I don't even remember her name, but it felt very forced. The chemistry and the romance there didn't feel natural. It didn't feel like it really was authentic. It felt very forced. I didn't believe it. I didn't buy into it at all. I think some of the plot conveniences, especially in the third act, they stretch my believability too much. Just some of the stuff that happens with the escape at the end by Ethan gets a little too ridiculous for me. So yeah, too crowded. A romance thing that I just feel was very forced and not well executed. Too many plot conveniences in there as well, and just a very forgettable villain as well that just didn't really do it for me. So Mission Impossible 2 is my number 43. Coming in at number 42, this might be a little upsetting to some people. I don't know how this one's going to be taken, but my number 42 is Bad Boys Ride or Die, also known as Bad Boys 4. The current and most recent of all of these movies, the one that's in theaters right now. You can go watch for yourself if you'd like. I won't go too much into depth here because I don't want to spoil anything for anyone that has plans on going to see this movie. I saw it just yesterday, and I honestly didn't have high expectations for it. I mean, it's a bad boy movie. It's not, the second coming of 12 Angry Men. It's a Bad Boys movie. I don't think any of the Bad Boy movies are bad necessarily, but their best movie is still not a great movie, in my opinion. Their worst is not bad, but their best is not great either. All four of the Bad Boy movies are just kind of like decent to pretty good. So Bad Boys 4, I think is a decent movie. I'd give it 2.5 stars. It did have some things going for it. It had some cool action set pieces in there. It had a good score. I do like some of the characters in this movie. I think that Mike and Marcus are enjoyable, entertaining characters. It did keep my attention and entertain me for an hour and 40 minutes. So it did have some things going for it, but what holds this movie back is just the lack of any new creative idea. They pretty much, without spoiling anything, take what they have already done in the previous films and just recycle it and use it again in this movie. There's nothing new. We don't see Marcus and Mike put in any type of new situation that they haven't already been in. There's no new development with these characters. I don't think the humor really worked at all. I felt like they tried to force, and like one of the things that made that first Bad Boys movie work, and even the second one, was the humor worked in those movies because it didn't feel like forced humor. It felt natural, like natural humor. In this one, it felt very forced. It felt like almost every 5 minutes we had to go off on a stand-up comedy session that distracted from the story, from the main story, or from developing characters or developing plot. Every 5 minutes they had to go on to some comedy sketch that was just, and it didn't work. It felt forced. It didn't feel set up very well at all. There's only one scene in the entire movie that actually got a laugh out of me, and it wasn't by Marcus or Mike. It was by one of the side characters, and his reaction to something that happens made me laugh. But yeah, a decent movie, 2.5 stars. I won't say anything more. I don't want to spoil anything for anyone that has plans on going to see this movie, but Bad Boys 4 is my number 42. Coming in at number 41, we have Rambo 3, which is, in my opinion, the worst of the Rambo movies in the Rambo franchise. This is also a 2.5-star film. The thing with Rambo 3 is I feel like there's not really anything that's befitting these characters here. They try to put the officer, the army officer, as I forget his name, but they try to make him the person that Rambo has to go save now, because they kind of ran out of ideas at this point. It feels like the first one, Rambo's countrymen are coming after him. The second one, he's got a mission on foreign soil that he's got to go do. By the third one, they're like, well, what do we do now? We don't really have much ideas. Oh, let's have him go have to save one of his own. But the problem is, what do we learn about Rambo that we didn't already know? Nothing. There's zero development with the Rambo character in this movie. Everything that we see him do, everything that we hear him say, all the information that we're given is information that we've already gathered from the prior two movies. So there's nothing new with the character. There's nothing really that we learn about the officer either. I mean, he's also a Green Beret, so him being able to survive this capture and interrogation, it's like, well, that shouldn't be a surprise, because if he's a Green Beret, he should be able to, resist this type of torture stuff. So yeah, I just felt like it lacked ingenuity, it lacked creativity. It's a plot and a story that, again, takes place on foreign soil and not on Rambo's home soil. And to me, that was kind of one of the things that worked about the first film, is Rambo's this guy that has come home from war and his own country has turned on him. But Rambo's love for his country is what makes him stick around and what makes him fight. But after the first one, he kind of he's like moved away, and in like all the other movies he's living in different countries, and it's like, no, I don't see Rambo doing that. The character that we see from the first two, that character that has been established, is the character that loves his country, loves his home country, America, and would want to be living in America. I don't buy that he would go off into a third world country where it's much worse and where he would be treated much worse, and choose to live and make his life in those foreign countries. So you can disagree, that's fine, but for me, Rambo 3 just didn't really offer me much. There's some cool things about it, some things it has going for it, but overall, 2.5-star film, decent, but nothing special for me. Coming in at number 40, we have Bad Boys for Life, also known as Bad Boys Part 3. Yeah, not a lot better than the newest Bad Boys movie. This is also 2.5-star film. So honestly, Part 3 and Part 4 are kind of interchangeable. The only thing that puts Bad Boys Part 3 above Bad Boys 4 is I did find it a little more entertaining. I felt like some of the humor landed a little bit better for me in Bad Boys 3 than in the newest one. I also thought that they actually did develop the characters a little in Bad Boys 3. Some of the stuff that the characters are in, some of the situations and the plots that they find themselves in Bad Boys 3 are actually new ideas, things that they haven't dealt with before. So they do new things with Mike and Marcus in Bad Boys 3. So I do give it some points for that. So yeah, Bad Boys 3 gets the nod here above Bad Boys 4. Again, not by a lot. They're both 2.5-star films. If someone wanted to swap these, it's cool. I'm fine with that. But Bad Boys 3 is my number 40. Coming in at number 39, we have Rambo, also known as Rambo 4 from 2008, I believe. Sylvester Stallone comes back to revive Rambo after not playing him in almost 20 years. In fact, I think it was 20-year gap between Rambo 3 and Rambo. A decent film. It looks really good. It's got some good visuals to it, some really gnarly kills. It's a very graphic and very violent Rambo movie. Arguably the most violent and most graphic of the franchise. I say arguably because there's another one that I think competes with it, but it is entertaining. It is entertaining. There are some cool kills, some good action scenes in the film, but it's, to me, what the story itself is just a story that doesn't really work for me. I don't know that it makes a whole lot of sense. I don't know that it's anything new that we're learning about the character of Rambo, anything that we needed. Like if you stop and just ask the question, was this a movie that we needed for the Rambo franchise? Was this a story that we needed to advance Rambo as a character, to advance the franchise? To me, the answer is no. It's not anything that we needed. It's not a story that really does anything for anyone. It's just kind of a fun action movie. But there's no, to me, there's not really any, there's not really anything deep about this movie. So and some of the performances and some of the characters are just really unlikable. Like Rambo saves these people's lives multiple times and they never even thank him for it. Not once. They're especially like the lady, you would think would be grateful or would at least say thank you, because they try to they try to write this female character as the one that actually has some heart, the one that's actually coming from a genuine place. But even she, after Rambo takes her to the place where they are trying to go, she doesn't even say thank you. You know, like the group of people are just, they come across very entitled, very self-righteous, and they're just not, I'm supposed to like this group of characters. I'm supposed to, you know, kind of feel something for them, have an emotional connection to them in some way. And I just don't, because of how they come across. Very entitled, very self-righteous, and I'm just not a fan. I don't care for any of them. So there's really no emotional effect or connection to any of these characters in the movie, which is one of my 3 criteria in rating a movie: the quality, the emotional effect, and the rewatch value. So yeah, Rambo, also known as Rambo 4, is my number 39, also 2.5 star film. Coming in at number 38, we have Taken 3. The worst of the 3 Taken movies. To me, it gets a little too, it's a little long. Honestly, I think they could have condensed it down. I think that they get a little ahead of themselves in this one. They set up certain plot points that don't really give you a satisfying payoff. I think that some of there's quite a bit of conveniences in this one too. I don't think the story is something that, you know, there's a little bit of an emotional effect there with, you know, with Liam Neeson's character losing his wife. There is somewhat of an emotional effect there, but I also think the story is also kind of lazy in some areas, and I don't think the action's as good as well. I don't think the pacing is as good either. So yeah, Taken 3 is the worst of the 3 Taken movies. Not a bad film. It's decent, 2.5 stars, but nothing more really for me. And the villain also was just the guy that they build to be the villain is actually a pawn to another character in the movie, and it's just poorly executed in that setup and payoff. Just, yeah, it doesn't really work. So Taken 3 is my number 38. Coming in at number 37, we have Jason Bourne, the 5th and latest installment in the Bourne franchise. I will just go ahead and say this is the first 3-star movie on this list. So this is a movie that I would actually consider a good movie. And from here on up, all these movies are going to be good movies to great movies to just all-time great movies. So yeah, Jason Bourne, I do think is a good movie. I would give this one 3 stars. I had a good time with it. It is entertaining. I like that they took some risks in this movie. They did a few things. Without spoiling anything, I won't give anything away, but they made some decisions in this one, a direction to go that is kind of risky, but I do think pays off, because we have seen that character in multiple other movies. I think in all the other movies. So what happens with them in this one, it actually has an effect because of the fact that it was set up for 4 movies prior. So there is some payoff there for me. I do like that they brought Jason Bourne back in this movie to kind of finish off his story. You could argue that the way his character is written off in the Bourne Ultimatum, the way that one kind of ends, is a proper ending to Jason Bourne. And I think that that's a fair argument, but I also think I would have liked to see Jason Bourne after the events of Ultimatum to see what exactly he does, where he goes from there. in his life. And here we actually get to see that a little bit. So I like Tommy Lee Jones as well as kind of the main villain, if you want to call him that, in this one. The guy that's heading up, well, he's not really a villain, but the guy that's heading up the agency in this one. He's a entertaining actor. So it's got some good stuff. I think it's also got some good action in it. It's entertaining. It's rewatchable. It has an emotional effect there, and I do think it's pretty competently made. So Jason Bourne, the weakest of the 5 Bourne movies, the worst of the 5, but still a good movie. So that should kind of tell you where we're at with the Bourne franchise. If the worst of the Bourne movies is still a good movie, that says a lot about the Bourne franchise as a whole. So Jason Bourne's number 37. Coming in at 36, might be a little controversial, but hey, that's what we're here for. I'm going with Rambo First Blood. Yeah, the first one. 3-star movie. I do think it's a good film. I don't think it's as great of a film as a lot of people make it out to be. There's some real issues I have with the script in this movie. Some dialogue that's just really poorly written in this movie. I think that there's also a lot of filler, a lot of things happening for 20, 30 minutes without really advancing anything in the story. It's a story essentially about this war veteran, Green Beret, John Rambo, who comes back after, serving his country and is kind of rejected by this, this town that he comes to, kind of, they reject him and they reject the Vietnam War. But the thing is the police officer, the top captain police officer guy, that's kind of the antagonist in this movie, takes things way too far. Like it's to the realm where it's not believable. I don't believe that this police officer guy would take things this far with a guy that he doesn't even know. It would be different if he had past history with John Rambo, but he doesn't. He never met him to this day. And then all of a sudden, simply because he doesn't like the Vietnam War, he's going to pursue Rambo this far, losing his own men, being told and warned about who Rambo is by Rambo's officer friend, and have essentially hunt Rambo down into this town where civilian lives are at stake. Like, when you think about how far this script goes, this story goes with the plot and the tension between the officer, captain, and Rambo, it's not believable. I do not believe that it would go this far at all. So yeah, it's asking a lot. It's really stretching my believability with how far things go in this film. Also, again, I just think there's a lot of filler. I think the dialogue is really weak. There's some major conveniences in this film as well. So yeah, not a bad film. It's a 3-star movie. I do like it. It is rewatchable, but I don't think for me, I don't think it's as great as what a lot of people make it out to be. If you love this movie, if you have this in like your top 10, that's cool. That's great. We like what we like. If that's your opinion, that's your opinion. But for me personally, I have it towards the bottom. It's number 36. So it's not the worst of these movies. It's not the worst of its franchise, but yeah, I don't think it's some, masterpiece of cinema either. So Rambo First Blood is my number 36. Coming in at 35, we have The Bourne Ultimatum, a film that seems to be towards the top of a lot of people's list for the Bourne franchise. I actually think it's one of the weakest Bourne movies. I think that there's a lot of filler in this movie. I mean, there's a whole segment of this movie where Jason Bourne is trying to work with this in-between guy, this middleman, trying to get him from point A to point B in this like train station place that they're in, just to have the guy die and it not really affect or impact anything. Like, if you take that whole segment out of the film, if you take that character out of the film, it changes nothing. Changes absolutely nothing with the story. Jason Bourne still gets what he needs to get. He still finds who he needs to find, and things still play out the way that they play out in this movie. But we get an entire, like, almost 20-minute segment of this film with this whole sequence that does absolutely nothing for the story, does absolutely nothing for the film. It's just filler. It's there for, it's arbitrary. It's there for no reason at all. So there's a lot of that stuff in this movie, just filler stuff that just doesn't need to be there. It looks cool. It's eye candy. It's there's some cool action scenes, but again, we're not really learning anything about Jason that we don't already know. We do get a pretty good conclusion at the end, and there are some cool fight scenes in there, but I think the editing is also pretty bad, in my opinion, in this movie. A lot of really quick, sharp cuts that, when I watch this movie, bothers my eyes and just makes me a little dizzy when I'm watching it, because the cuts are just so quick. And I'm thinking specifically about the roof chase, when Jason is being chased on the rooftops of that city that he's in. A lot of those cuts in that scene are just really sharp, quick cuts that bother my eyes when I watch it, because they kind of make me dizzy a little bit. And yeah, just not a fan of those really sharp, quick cuts like that. So editing wasn't very good. I don't think the script was as well written or as tight as the scripts in the first two movies. So yeah, I don't think The Bourne Ultimatum is as great as what a lot of people make it out to be. Still a good movie, 3-star film. I do have a good time with it overall, but it is my number 35. Coming in at number 34, we have Quantum of Solace, the weakest of the Daniel Craig Bond movies, 007. It's still a good movie. It is still a good movie. To me, one of the things that bothers me, though, with this movie is the villain. I think is the weakest of the Daniel Craig Bond villains. His motive is not, doesn't really, I don't really get on board with his motive. To me, he comes across as a really smart guy, but his motive is actually quite stupid when you think about it. And it's not like what he's after. His motive isn't going to pay him off in the long run. So it's like, why are you going along with this when you're really not going to get paid off? And he comes across as a smart guy, so you would think he would be able to figure that out. But it's like, no. I mean, any person with a brain can kind of see what's going to happen here, and yet you're going along with this. It felt like a weak motive. The character himself, the antagonist, he wasn't intimidating, he wasn't frightening, he wasn't imposing at all. I felt no threat by him whatsoever. I don't think he posed any threat to Bond. Physically, he was no threat to Bond. Philosophically, he was no threat to Bond. Mentally, intellectually, he really was no threat to Bond. I just didn't get any sense of threat from the villain, which you should feel in any good movie with a hero and an antagonist. You should feel some sense of threat by the villain, whether it's a physical threat, intellectual threat, moral or philosophical threat. You should feel a threat by the antagonist in the movie. I didn't feel that with the antagonist in this movie at all. So that really weighs this movie down quite a bit. I also didn't really buy the chemistry between Bond and the girl in this movie either. Just, it was the weakest of the Bond relationships in the Daniel Craig franchise. So still a good movie. It's got some good action in it. Got a good score. It's pasted pretty well. I do like it. I think it's better than what I've heard. Some people just think this is just like a bad, cruddy Bond movie. And I'm like, no, I wouldn't go that far with it. I do think it's a good movie, but I also think it's the weakest of the Daniel Craig Bond movies. So Quantum of Solace, 3-star film. It's number 34 for me. Coming in at number 33, we have Bad Boys, the first one, the OG from 1995. A movie that I do think is, as far as the script is concerned, I think it's actually pretty well written for the most part. And I think that Marcus and Mike have good chemistry in this one. They're entertaining characters that keep your attention throughout the way. I do think it feels a lot more like a detective type of movie, which I enjoy as well. And I also like the antagonist in this movie as well. I think he actually did feel like a threat as well. And I think that this movie, maybe more than any of the other Bad Boy movies, takes itself serious. And that's one thing I like about this movie. I don't like when movies that are not supposed to be purely comedy movies don't take themselves serious. And that was one of the criticisms I have with the recent Bad Boys movie as well. I didn't feel like it took itself serious at all. This one actually feels like it takes itself serious. Yes, there are still comedic moments that happen with Mike and Marcus, but the story, the script, the tone of this movie still feels like it's taking itself serious. There's an actual goal that they're trying to achieve here with this film, and it's pasted really well. I do like the characters in this movie. So yeah, this is a good movie. I would give it 3 stars. I do enjoy it. And yeah, Bad Boys is my number 33. Coming in at number 32, we have Die Hard 2. Yeah, just kind of a generic action movie to me a little bit. It's got a villain that just wants to get paid off for some stuff, just after some money, and he, targets this airport. Things go south. He runs into John McClane, and John McClane has to stop him, and he does, of course. And yeah, there's not a lot to this movie. It's not, there's not like some deep philosophical meaning to this movie. It's not super complicated or complex. There's not a whole lot of plot points going on. There's just kind of one plot throughout the movie. John McClane has to save these people at an airport. It's pretty much it. That's the movie. So is it cool? Yeah, it's cool. It's got some cool action. You're going to get some of those one-liners, John McClane one-liners in this movie. The villain, I think, was kind of oversold a little bit. I feel like he was trying to be a tough guy. And yeah, just there's a difference between someone that feels like a genuine threat and someone who's trying to be a genuine threat. And to me, I just felt like this guy was trying too hard to make me think that he was some badass guy or whatever. So yeah, I like Die Hard 2. It's fun, but it doesn't do a whole lot for me other than just give me a good 2 hours of my time wasted. There you go. So Die Hard 2 is my number 32. Number 31, I have Die Hard with a Vengeance, also known as Die Hard Part 3. This one and Part 2 are very close. They are pretty interchangeable. This is also a 3-star movie for me. And on any given day, these two could flop, but I do give the slight nod to Die Hard 3 because of the villain here. I do really like Jeremy Irons as the villain. He is entertaining. I do think he poses an intellectual threat to McClane here. I do like the relationship between our protagonist and antagonist in this movie. I think it's also better paced here. We get John McClane in a different situation, different stage of his life now. He's tried to work things out with his wife. It's still not working out very well. He's got to deal with that. So I do think this movie just, it does a little bit more. It offers a little more for me than part two. Some of the things that keep it back from being higher, though, is a lot of, and I kind of mentioned this in my Die Hard ranking video, but I'm not a fan of movies that try to force racial things into the film that don't really need to be there. It's one thing if a character is being racist towards another character in a movie, you have a legitimate reason to bring racial things up in the plot. But when the character is not being racist at all in the movie, and there's no reason to assume he's being racist, then there's no reason to make things racial. And yet we get that repeatedly by Samuel L. Jackson's character in this movie, and it annoys the crap out of me. Now, I get that this was from 95, it wasn't from present day, but because we live in a society where people are so hypersensitive about everything today, to me, it annoys me. I don't care to hear everything being everything that someone says being accused of being racist, or making everything that someone says out to be a racial comment or whatever. It's dumb. I don't need it. There's no place for it in this movie. There's no reason to have it here. It doesn't do or impact the story or the character at all. You can take it out and you still have the plot between John McClane and the villain in this movie. There's no need for it in this film. It's not funny. It's the humor doesn't work. It's not set up well. There's no payoff to it, and I just don't care for it. There's no need for it. So it just comes across as annoying to me. So yeah, that's the primary reason why Die Hard 3 isn't higher on this list, because of just, for me and my subjective viewing experience, I get very annoyed with that, with that kind of crap. But yeah, there you go. Die Hard 3 is my number 31. Moving on to number 30, we have Mission Impossible Fallout, also known as Mission Impossible Part 6. Here's the thing with this movie. It's a good movie. I'd give it 3 stars. But to me, it's just, I feel the repetitiveness of the Mission Impossible franchise in this movie. To me, they bring Solomon Lang back in this movie. I don't think they needed to. I think he worked well in MI5. I don't think they needed to bring him back here. They could have just given us a different villain and it could have worked. But bringing him back, I felt wasn't needed. I also don't think that they did anything in this movie that was creative or was new. Like, we get the same cast coming back, but what do we learn about them? How does this story or the script develop any of these characters? It doesn't really. We get some typical cool Mission Impossible action sequences, which are cool. Tom Cruise does his own stunts, which is impressive that he does that. Props to him for doing it. It's eye candy, visual eye candy. I do enjoy it. I have a fun time with it. It's a 3-star movie, but it's definitely not the best of the Mission Impossible franchises. To me, that's ridiculous. When I see people have this as like their 1 or 2 favorite MI movies, I just look at them like, really? really? Why? Other than just having visual eye candy for 2 hours, what is it about this movie that makes this the best in my movie? Is there some profound emotional effect that this movie has on you? Not for me, there's not. It's fun, but there's no emotional impact that this movie has on me. Is it, super creative in its storytelling or in its script? No, not really. So why is this at the top of, so many people's Mission Impossible ranking? If your whole thing is just give me a lot of fun blow ups and action scenes, then cool, I get it. But for me, I cared about more than just eye candy for 2 hours. And so for me, while there is plenty of eye candy in Mission Impossible 6, it's not really a whole lot of anything else. So for me, Mission Impossible Fallout comes in at number 30. Coming in at number 29, and I'll just say we're going up a tier now to 3.5 star films. With my number 29, I'm going with Lethal Weapon Part 3. I do like all the Lethal Weapon movies quite a bit. And this is the worst of the Lethal Weapon movies, and it's still a 3.5 star film. So that's a pretty good rating for your worst film in your franchise. I do really like this movie. By this point, you're really invested with Riggs and Murtaugh and their characters. I think one of the issues, though, for me is I felt like this one gets a little over cheesy with some of the comedy stuff. Just doesn't quite land for me and was just kind of there for filler. I don't think it was really doing anything for the plot or the story. It was just kind of there to try to kind of get a laugh out of you, and it just didn't really land for me. But overall, it's still a really good movie. Good action stuff, good detective work. They keep advancing the characters here. We get them in a new state, a new place in their lives. They continue to develop Riggs and Murtaugh. Of course, Joe Pesci is always entertaining, but I really enjoyed this movie. It's a 3.5 star film. It's my number 29. Moving on to 28, we have Skyfall. Skyfall, a really good movie, 3.5 star film. I really enjoy it. I think that Javier Bardem does a great job as the villain in this movie. He's very captivating. You're glued to the screen when he's on screen. I think he definitely poses a threat to Bond. I feel a sense of a moral, philosophical threat to Bond because this is a guy that has been on Bond's side. He's been an agent before for MI. He's been an agent for them. So he can present a philosophical discussion for Bond that actually poses a genuine threat there, because if Bond buys into his train of thought, Bond could actually flip. And that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to flip Bond and get Bond to work with him against Mom and, the agency. So you do feel a genuine philosophical, moral threat there in this movie by Bardem. So I do like Skyfall. I do think it's a very good movie. It's just not quite on par with some of the other ones. I don't think the pacing is as good. There's a couple of places where I get a little restless, I'm kind of wanting things to move along a little better, a little quicker for me personally. I also Judi Dench's character, she's in these first 3 Bond movies, and I don't know what it is about her, but she's just so annoying to me. She's just to me, she just comes across as this heartless, cold person that there's there's no feelings for her, man. Like, I have no sympathy for her. To me, she's just using Bond. No matter, I don't care what she says. Actions speak louder than words. And to me, nothing that she does, nothing that she shows me, shows that she gives a rat's ass about Bond. She's literally willing to shoot him and have him killed with no hesitation. And she claims that she felt like it was the right choice, but it clearly wasn't the right choice. Because Bond is your best agent and he's your best chance you have at getting this guy. So why would you think that killing him would be the best choice in that situation? It's not. You try to avoid, casualties at all costs. Friendly casualty. That's like the number one rule of war, is avoid friendly casualties at all costs. And she doesn't. She very... just without hesitation, just yeah, pull the trigger, kill Bond. I don't care. We'll move on without him. It's just she's in all three of the movies that she's in, she just comes across just this cold witch, man, that so annoying. I personally didn't feel like she really gave a crap about Bond. I know they try to make it out like she did, but I don't buy it for a second. And so when she RIPs at the end of this movie, the emotional effect that they try to get me to feel in that moment isn't there, and it doesn't work because I didn't have any emotional effect towards her. I didn't care about her. I didn't like her at all. So yeah, for me, Skyfall, very good movie, has some good stuff going for it, but I think the pacing isn't quite on point. I'm very annoyed by Judi Dench's character in the movie, and there's a few other things that pull it down some for me, but still a very good movie. 3.5 stars. It's my number 28. Coming in at number 27, we have Lethal Weapon Part 4, the last of the Lethal Weapon movies. Very good movie. 3.5 stars. All the Lethal Weapon movies are essentially in the same realm. They're all kind of right there in that 3.5 star range for me. And honestly, any of them could flip on any given day. The reason I rank them how I do is rewatch value. When movies are a tie with a specific rating, I rank them based on the rewatch value. So for me, I do find Lethal Weapon 4 a little more rewatchable than Lethal Weapon 3, just because I feel like there's a little bit more heart there. For me, also the conclusion, I think, is a satisfying payoff as well to these two guys' overall story that we've been following for 4 films. So Lethal Weapon 4 is my number 27, also a 3.5 star film. Coming in at number 26, we have Rambo Last Blood, and the last of the Rambo movies as well, that just came out in 2019. So still pretty recent, within the past 5 years. Didn't expect to like this movie. I really didn't. I thought that this movie was going to be pretty weak because I was just like, really? Sylvester Stallone in his 60s still trying to do Rambo stuff? Okay. But then I watched it and I was like, that was actually pretty good. That was actually, yeah, I liked it quite a bit. I think the second half is much better than the first half, in my opinion. The second half, the pacing is just on point. Some awesome kills, man. I think this one gives Rambo a run for its money for most violent Rambo movies. Some of the kills and the scenes in the second half of this movie are just gnarly, man. They're just straight up savage kills. I love it. And yeah, there is definitely an emotional, punch there for me as well with what happens. I do think we get a satisfying conclusion to Rambo's story as well. So yeah, for me, I really liked Rambo Last Blood. There's definitely some issues with it, primarily in the first half of the film. But overall, yeah, Rambo Last Blood is a solid action movie. I have it at number 26. Coming at 25, we have Lethal Weapon, the OG, the original. Another 3.5-star film. I thoroughly enjoy it, have a good time with it. I think this is obviously the movie that introduces us to Murdaugh and Riggs. I like seeing them kind of come together and be forced to work together, put their differences aside, and have to work together as detectives. I think that the detective action is handled pretty well. I like learning and seeing these characters at an earlier state in their lives. I think it's also somewhat emotional too, like especially when you learn about Riggs's backstory and you kind of see him trying to deal with the loss of his wife. I think there's some emotion there for me. So again, 3.5-star film, along with the other Lethal Weapon movies. It's right there in that same realm, but for those reasons, I do give it a slight nod overall. So Lethal Weapon comes in at 25. Number 24, I have the first Mission Impossible movie, MI Part 1. This is a super fun movie. It's very memorable. I think it's got some great action scenes in it. The wire scene where I keep calling him Hanks. It's not Tom Hanks. It's Tom Cruise. When Cruise comes down in that facility on the wires, I still watch this movie to this day. When I watch this movie, I still get like on edge. That scene still makes me nervous. It still kind of gets my palms sweaty a little bit. Like it's so well handled. The tension is so well directed in that scene as well. I like the story here, the mystery, this kind of, all right, where are we going? Who's the bad guy here? How is it going to play out? It's a fun ride. It's entertaining. It's very rewatchable. I do think it's well made, especially for its time. There are some issues I have with it. I think that the script is a little bit weak in some areas. I don't necessarily think that the antagonist is the best, in my opinion, of the MI franchise. I think he's kind of weak. But yeah, overall, just a really, really solid 90s action movie. So Mission Impossible comes in at number 24. Number 23 is Bad Boys 2, my favorite of the Bad Boys movie. This is a 3.5-star film. I do really enjoy it. I think it's better than what a lot of people make it out to be. I think the action is handled well. The pacing is brilliant. I really enjoyed some of the set pieces and the action work. I think is well directed. I also think there's good motive here. There's good chemistry. There's good emotional payoffs in this movie as well. So it's my favorite of the Bad Boys movie. I think they balance the action with the humor just right. Nothing feels forced. And yeah, it's the most entertaining and rewatchable of the Bad Boys movies. So it is my favorite of that franchise and number 23 on my list. Coming in at 22, we have Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, also known as Mission Impossible Part 7, the most recent of the Mission Impossible movies. Really enjoyed this one. 3.5-star film. I liked that they took some chances. They also made some decisions that I quite frankly, I felt like they needed to make for the benefit of this franchise. When every character in a franchise continues to make it out time after time, it gets old. And that's one of my criticisms with MI Part 6 too, is like, I just don't buy that all of these characters would make it out of all of these plots time after time after time. Like eventually, no, they're going to get, they're going to get wasted. They're going to get capped, man. And so I liked that MI7 actually killed off one of these characters. And because we had invested with them for, a few movies prior to this, it actually had an emotional payoff. The emotional payoff worked because we spent several movies with them. So it actually, that emotional payoff landed for me. I also liked the new characters that they brought in. I liked the kind of the plots that they kind of intertwine here together. I thought was handled well. That third act was really entertaining and kept me on edge. So yeah, really enjoyed Dead Reckoning Part 1. Looking forward to Dead Reckoning Part 2. Moving on to number 21, we have Taken 2. Yes, Liam Neeson comes back. More action with the Russians. This time they come after him. They kind of come after him and his wife and his daughter. They come after all of them. But yeah, what I like about Taken 2 is we actually see consequences. We see the consequences of Liam Neeson's actions from the first one. And that's something we don't really get in a lot of action franchises, is how would the events of the prior movie affect this character going forward? Are there consequences that this character, our main protagonist, would have to face because of the actions that he has to take in the prior movie? And what I like about Taken 2 is that they actually explore that. They actually show that, hey, yeah, there are consequences for the actions that Liam Neeson has to take in the first Taken movie, going after his daughter to save his daughter, and the people that he crosses, the people that he has to take out and who they work for. There's some consequences to it. And I like that. I liked seeing a logical response to actions taken in a prior film. I think the action works really well. I think that we see Neeson's character put in a new situation that he wasn't in the first Taken movie. We get to see that play out. So yeah, I think they do some really good, some cool stuff with Taken 2. I like a lot of the set pieces and stuff. The characters are good. So yeah, I really enjoyed Taken 2. It's my number 21. Moving into top 20. With number 20, I'm going with The Bourne Legacy, another 3.5 star film that I think is very good. I know a lot of people don't like that Jason Bourne isn't in this movie, so it just doesn't feel like a Bourne movie. Okay. To me, I love this movie. I think it's a lot of fun. I love Jeremy Renner. Jeremy Renner's one of my favorite actors. He's one of my boys. So yeah, I'm more than on board with seeing him in a Bourne movie doing his stuff. Quite frankly, I would have loved to seen a Bourne movie with him and Jason Bourne in it. I think that would have been a lot of fun, but yeah, this is a fun movie. I love seeing, the scenes where they show Jeremy Renner actually training. I think that's a new development for the character that we didn't really see Bourne training in any of the prior movies. We're told that he has these skills. We see him using his skills, but I just like that we see Renner's character here actually, training. And we see how he's getting his skills. And the action works really well. The pacing is great. The villain is good. The cinematography work, the camera work is really cool in this movie. I have a good time with it. Bourne Legacy is my number 20. Coming in at 19, this one I know is going to get me some flack from a lot of people. But hey, you like what you like. What can I say? My number 19 is the original Die Hard. That's right. Yeah. Tell me how stupid I am for having Die Hard this low. It's a 3.5 star film. I don't care what anyone else says. If you have it as 5 stars, then that's on you. But for me, I have never seen what it is about the first Die Hard that so many people just hail as just the greatest action movie ever made. To me, it's a generic action movie. You get your protagonist that, he gets in a plot with your antagonist. There's a couple people whose lives at stake. He's got to save them, figure out a plan of how to take out the villain. Boom, he does, and that's it. Is there like deep emotional effect in this movie? No, not really. We're introduced to John McClane in this movie. We can see that he's trying to improve himself. He's trying to be, a better husband, a better person, and kudos to him for that. But I also don't think that there's any, there's not really a lot of emotional depth to this movie. It's just kind of a generic action movie. I think that it is entertaining. It is very entertaining and rewatchable. Definitely has that going for it. But as far as what, like, if you ask a question, what makes this such a masterpiece? Like, what would make this a 5-star movie? For me, again, my 3 criteria are the technical side of things, the emotional effect the movie has on me, and the rewatch value. This movie is very rewatchable. It doesn't really have any emotional effect, though. And the technical side of things, it's good. I don't think it's great. Like, the script isn't some genius script that's super well thought out and just flawless script. No, there's some flaws in it that I could point out. I think I did point out a couple of them in my Die Hard ranking video. It's not a flawless script. I think the pacing could be better in some places. I don't think that the antagonist is nearly as great of an antagonist as a lot of people want to make him out to be. He's nowhere near the best antagonists in action movies, in my opinion. I don't think he poses somewhat of an intellectual threat to John McClane, but not. He doesn't really pose a physical threat. Doesn't really pose a philosophical threat, and the intellectual threat, McClane ends up outsmarting him in the end anyway. So it's like, did he really even pose an intellectual threat? It's kind of arguable. So yeah, to me, it's a generic action movie. It's fun. It's a fun ride, and it is rewatchable. It's a 3.5-star movie. I enjoy it. I like this movie. I just don't think it's a great film. I just don't think it's a 5-star masterpiece of cinema. I don't see it. But overall, very good movie. It's number 19 for me. Coming in at number 18, we have London Has Fallen. The worst of the Fallen movies. And when I say worst of the Fallen movies, we're still talking about a 3.5-star film. So it's still a very good movie. I love Gerard Butler. He's just a very entertaining action, guy for me. I love him in everything I see him in. He is Leonidas. He is Leonidas to me. But he's been in some great movies, and I think he's got a very commanding on-screen presence as well. So I naturally gravitate towards Gerard Butler when he's on screen, and I love him in this franchise, in this Fallen franchise. I love his character. I think he has some heart to him. I think he's a very likable character. I think the action is very good, and I love the supporting characters, the surrounding characters. I think Aaron Eckhart is a very likable character. Very entertaining as well. We see a new threat, a new plot that they find themselves in this movie, and I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. I think it's well made. I think it's very rewatchable. I do think there's some heart to it, especially in the third act with some of the stuff that happens. So yeah, there are some issues. What brings it down, I think, primarily in the script department and some of the stuff that is said towards the beginning of this movie. What happens after that line of dialogue is delivered doesn't support that line of dialogue. So you're left wondering, how is this true if what I'm seeing happen is happening? How does that make that statement true? You know, there's some, there were a few things in the script that could have been tightened up a little bit for me, but overall, super fun movie. And I enjoy the characters collectively more than I enjoy the characters collectively in the original Die Hard. So that's what puts this over Die Hard for me. Number 18. Coming at number 17, we have Mission Impossible 3. And this is the first 4-star movie on this list. I think this is a great movie. I love Mission Impossible 3. It does have my favorite antagonist in the MI franchise. I think Philip Seymour Hoffman, RIP, does a great job in this movie. He is, I think, the best villain in a Mission Impossible movie. I think his threat is very believable in here as well. He's very entertaining. I think gives a great performance and kind of steals the show, honestly, in this film. Really good action, a well-written script, good, likable characters, and just a fun time with definitely an emotional, that third act and the plot and the situation that Ethan finds himself in that was set up by Philip Seymour Hoffman's character. Really good, man. Really put you on the edge of your seat, and just good stuff, man. Love Mission Impossible 3. It's a 4-star film. It's number 17 on my list. Coming in at number 16, we have Spectre. A Bond movie that I don't typically see held in high regard by people, and it's a little confusing as to why that is. I love this movie. I think this is a great Bond movie. I think it's a great action movie. I think it's a great movie in general. I think that Christoph Waltz is such an entertaining actor, and everything I see him in, I'm glued to that screen, man. I want to see everything that he's doing. I think he's a great villain. I think he actually poses an intellectual threat to Bond in this movie. I feel like he can and has outsmarted Bond every step of the way. So he does pose a genuine intellectual threat to Bond, in my opinion. So I think that the relationship there is played out really well. Some great action scenes, a great score to it, good cast, and there's some stuff in the third act that I think gets a little ridiculous, with just how they set up certain things, and then you see a character surviving something that there's no way he should have survived, being perfectly honest. But so I do think they get a little bit lazy towards the end of the film with the script, but overall, man, it's a blast. I love this movie. I love the plot, the tension, the characters. I love it. It's a 4-star film, and it's my number 16. Coming in at number 15, we have Angel Has Fallen, the last of the Fallen movies. This movie, I like that they really put Mike Banning in a different situation here. He's now a fugitive on the run. He's not the guy that they're calling in to come save the day. He's the guy that they're after in this movie, and I like that. It's showing that you're actually using your brain, your brain cells, you're thinking outside the box, you're trying to open that creative envelope, show some ingenuity, and do something different with the character and still make a good movie with it. And I think they succeed in that. I think there's an emotional side there, especially bringing in Nick Nolte as Banning's father. I think that brings a lot of heart to the film, while also some comedic scenes as well between the two of them. The one scene in particular where these guys come after Banning and his father has set up some like trip wires along the way. And when Banning sees the aftermath of, what happens when those trip wires go off, the reaction by Nick Nolte there gets a laugh out of me every time. Good stuff, good action, very rewatchable. I think an interesting script that has some plot points going on, different times that they continue. It has movement to it. It's not just 20 minutes of filler action that doesn't need to be there. I think the action here has movement to it. It's unveiling certain plot points along the way. So I like it. I think that Angel Has Fallen is a great movie. Entertaining characters, great performances. I love it. It is my number 15. Coming in at number 14, we have Rambo First Blood Part 2. And if you're keeping track, staying along with me, you can figure out this is my favorite Rambo movie, because I think it just brings everything together. Great action. I think it has a script that actually makes sense. There's originally when you're watching this movie like the first time and you hear that there's this mission that they want Rambo to go on for them, that they need him to go on. Originally, when you're watching it, you're like, well, why not just send in a SEAL team to do this mission? Why not just send in another special forces unit to do this mission? But then in the third act, when it gets revealed that it was all just a setup for Rambo, it makes a lot more sense why they chose him to do this. So the script actually makes sense. I think there's a lot more movement to this movie as well. It's not just a bunch of filler. It's not just a plot where a guy's doing something that is just... The believability factor is a lot more present for me in this movie than in the first one. I don't think that, the antagonist in this movie, I don't think is taking things too far. Like it makes sense is what I'm saying. Like the plot and the setups here makes sense. There's payoff to it. There's movement. It's got two of my favorite scenes in the Rambo franchise. One of them being the mud wall, when Rambo's hiding in the mud and the camera's in front of the Viet Cong guy, and you just see Rambo's eye open in the back and he's just hiding in that mud wall. Freaking awesome scene, man. Savage scene. And then the grenade scene when Rambo throws that grenade and that guy great stuff, man. Love it. It is my favorite Rambo movie. If you want to debate that with me, feel free to in the comment section. Just be respectful about it, and we'll have some fun there. So that is my number 14. Number 13, I have John Wick Chapter 2. Now, this is the first John Wick movie on this list, and it's a 4-star film, and it's number 13 for me. So you guys could probably tell I'm quite a fan of the John Wick franchise. I love all 4 of these movies. I think they are I think collectively as a franchise, the John Wick franchise is the best of the action franchises. It's just their worst movie is still a 4-star film for me. The reason I have part 2 as the lowest, I think there's some filler here. Like the first and the whole entire first act could have just been handled better. The opening sequence with the Russians wasn't really even needed. You could take that out. It doesn't change a single thing with the rest of the story or script. When the guy comes to John Wick's house, to give him that pitch, and then you have an entire sequence afterwards where some things happen and John Wick's almost forced into accepting the deal for this guy. All of that could have been avoided. You could have just simply set it up, introduced it to where John Wick has been put in a situation where he is forced to work with this guy to do him a favor, instead of doing an entire act of essentially kind of wasted material, stuff that you doesn't really need to be there for the rest of the story. So, but still a great movie. The action, the set pieces are just some of the best in any action movie. The gunplay, the fight scenes, just awesome stuff, man. I love John Wick Part 2. Great movie. And it's my number 13. Coming in at number 12, we have The Bourne Identity. The first of the Bourne movies. Still one of the best, in my opinion. It's the second in its franchise. I love the mystery to it. Jason Bourne trying to discover who he is, find out who he is. I think it was an interesting take on the action agent franchise genre. Instead of the guy already being this badass killer guy that already knows who he is and is well established, it's a guy that has all these skills but doesn't know who he is and has to figure out along the way through circumstances and evidence who he is. And I love how it plays out. Great action, great fight scenes, good characters. Love The Bourne Identity. It's my number, what did I say, 12? Yeah. Number 11, I have Live Free or Die Hard, also known as Die Hard Part 4. This is my favorite of the Die Hard movies. I think that Justin Long is a big part of that. I love Justin Long in this movie. I love Justin Long as an actor, as a person. I find him incredibly entertaining in everything he does. I could watch him order a meal at McDonald's for 5 minutes and be thoroughly entertained by it. He's that guy. He has so much energy and charisma about him. He makes this movie a lot of fun for me. There's some humor that works because of Justin. I love his relationship and the rapport with him and John McClane. The action scenes, I think, are well set up, well handled. They don't spend too long on any one action sequence. I think the pacing is great. It moves really well. The characters are good. And it's just, to me, I think this is the best Die Hard movie. The threat is a genuine threat that I actually buy into and believe in this movie with the antagonist. And I think it has the most entertaining surrounding supporting cast of the franchise as well. So this is a great Die Hard movie. It is my favorite of the Die Hard franchise, and it's my number 11. Bringing us into the top 10, my number 10, I have Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, also known as Mission Impossible Part 4. Another 4-star movie, great film. The Dubai sequence is one of the craziest sequences in this franchise. It's so well shot. It's so well directed because it makes you feel that moment and what it's like in that moment. And it puts you on the edge of your seat. It still makes me kind of, it gets my heart rate going a little bit. Just because it's some crazy stunts that Cruise is pulling off in this movie. So this is also the first movie we get introduced to Jeremy Renner's character. Again, I'm a Renner fan. I love him and everything he's in. So bringing him into the franchise with this one, I'm on board with. I love it. And he's great in this movie. So yeah. Love Ghost Protocol. It's a 4-star film. It's my number 10. Coming in at number 9 is Olympus Has Fallen, the first of the Fallen movies with Gerard Butler. I still think it's the best. I think it has maybe the most emotional effect. I know the Angel Has Fallen has quite a bit there with Nick Nolte's character, but Olympus Has Fallen, I think especially with Mike Banning feeling the weight of the actions that what happens in the first act of this film, the opening sequence. He feels the weight of that. He feels the guilt with that, and he has to deal with that throughout this movie. And I just think that it has a lot of emotional effect for me in this film. It also gets me maybe the angriest, with the exception of possibly the first John Wick movie. This movie might get me the angriest of all of these movies, with the level of terrorism that these terrorists do in this movie. It's just it infuriates me every time I watch this movie. It infuriates me with these terrorist assholes in this movie. But love Mike Banning as a character. Love the pacing. Aaron Eckhart is great. There's some real tension building scenes in this movie that really work. And love Olympus Has Fallen. It's my number 9. Coming in at number 8, we have the first Taken movie with Liam Neeson. Just a fun action movie, some great dialogue in it, a good script that makes sense. It's well flushed out along the way. There's not like any plot holes here. It's a dad that's trying to save his daughter from a group of terrorists and human traffickers, and he flips that switch from just your everyday fun-loving dad to just badass that's trying to snap some necks and cash some checks along the way. Super rewatchable, a lot of fun, has some heart to it, man. Especially in that third act, man, and even in the first act when his daughter gets taken. Great stuff, man. The pacing is good, the directing is good, the performances are good, and the payoff is good. It's a great film. I love Taken. It's my number 8. Coming in at number 7, we have John Wick Chapter 4. The last of the John Wick movies, for now at least. Will it be the final John Wick movie? Some might say it's the last one. If you ask me, I don't know. I think I think that Mr. Wick might have a few more tricks up his sleeve, if I'm being honest. But John Wick Chapter 4 is a great movie. This is our first 4.5-star film, so this is right on the edge of being 5 stars. It doesn't quite get there for me. There's a few things in this movie that I'm a little sketch. I don't think that dialogue's quite as well written as some of the other movies. I think some of the action sequences are a little drawn out. I think you could have, probably reeled in some of the action sequences, condensed them down a little bit, made it a little tighter, and I think it would have worked a little better. Didn't quite have the emotional effect as like the first one, for example. It doesn't quite get to that 5-star tier for me, but a great film. Love it. Awesome action, awesome fights, awesome gunplay. It's John Wick. It's, you're going to get all that stuff in a John Wick movie. So, John Wick 4 is my number 7. And right above it, coming at number 6, is John Wick 3. These two are pretty interchangeable. This is also a 4.5-star film. I suppose you could flip these two. I just think for me, John Wick 3 just slightly edges part 4 out, just because I think that the The fighting scenes are a little more fluid. I think that the pacing is a little bit better as well. I think John Wick 4 was maybe a tad too long, and that was because I think the fight scenes were a little drawn out. John Wick 3, I think, is a little bit more condensed. I think the pacing's a little bit better. I think it moves at a little bit better pace. So that's essentially it. I mean, you still get great action scenes, great gunplay. I do like that final showdown in the end of John Wick 3 where he's just held up in that room with all the guns you could possibly think of, and he's just offing people. Great stuff, man. So yeah, John Wick 3 is my number 6. Bringing us into the top 5 now. Top 5. My number 5, I got Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, also known as Mission Impossible Part 5. My favorite of the Mission Impossible movies, it must be said. I just love this movie. I saw it in theaters and just have loved it ever since. I think it brings the emotion. I think it brings the action. I think it brings the technical side of things with a good script. And super rewatchable as well. It brings all the characters that I love. It introduces us to Solomon Lane, poses a genuine threat there for me. And I love Rogue Nation. I absolutely love it. And it's my favorite of the Mission Impossible movies. 4.5-star film. It's my number 5. Coming in at number 4, we have The Bourne Supremacy. And this is my favorite Bourne movie. The reason for me why The Bourne Supremacy is my favorite of the Bourne movies is I think this is the most personal. And I think it has the most emotional payoff to it. When Jason's girlfriend gets RIP'd, you feel that, man. Like it has an emotional punch to it. And the plot then becomes a lot more personal with Jason. He's out on a vendetta ride. He's out for revenge. And I just feel like the plot and the tension is the most personal of the Bourne movies in this one. It also has, in my opinion, probably the best fight scene, my favorite fight scene, I should say, with Jason, the other assassin that he goes up against. Great stuff. Very well paced, well acted, great directing. And yeah, it's my favorite of the Bourne movies. Coming in at number 3, and I'll just go ahead and say my top 3 here are all 5-star films. So these top 3 are all perfect movies, in my opinion. But my number 3, I'm going with Casino Royale, the first of the Daniel Craig Bond movies. I love this movie. It's a 5-star film. I love poker. So, the whole poker game and poker contests in this movie in the third act is just a lot of fun, very entertaining, very engaging. I like the villain here. He comes off as a very genuine threat as well. I buy into it. I love seeing Bond not quite as a 00 agent yet. He's working to get there. You feel like he has something to prove. Just great stuff in this movie. Great action, very well made. It has an emotional effect to it for me. So, yeah, Casino Royale, 5-star film. It's number 3 for me. Coming in at number 2, we have the last of the Bond movies, No Time to Die. Another 5-star film. Love this movie. I think this is the one that has the most emotional effect to it of the Daniel Craig Bond films. Especially in that third act, man. If you're going to end the Daniel Craig Bond franchise, this was the way to end it. Hats off to them, man. What a way to end the franchise. Great run by Daniel Craig. He is, in my opinion, the definitive Bond. He's my favorite Bond. And he's just had a heck of a ride, man, through these 5 films. A great character development, character arc along the way. And this is the ultimate payoff to it. So, yeah, I love this movie. It's, it is long, but it doesn't feel long. The pacing is very good. It's beautifully shot, great cinematography, a great villain in it as well that is, very entertaining, and a great performance there as well. So, yeah, love No Time to Die. It is my favorite Bond movie. It's 5 stars. It's perfection in my opinion, and it's my number 2. But wrapping things up here with my number 1, the only one that hasn't been mentioned is the first John Wick movie. The original John Wick, still my favorite of the franchise, and it's still my favorite of all of these action movies. 5-star film. The introduction to John Wick, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. The fight scenes are great. The gunplay is great. The tone of this movie is what gets me. The tone is just spot on. This dark, eerie tone along the way. John Wick, to me, is he's played off as El Kui, as the boogeyman, and I love the tone and the setting in this movie. The villain is a great villain. It has a strong emotional effect with what they do to John Wick in the first act of this movie. You just, man, if I was John Wick and these guys did to me what they did to John Wick in this first John Wick movie, buddy, you better believe there would be some war and there would be some hell to pay. So, I totally invested with the character of John Wick after that. And just the story, the guy, he's trying to move on from his wife. He loved his wife. That was his only joy that he had in his life that gets taken from him. He's cold. He's dark. He feels like he's probably lost his soul along the way, and he comes to the point of no return. And it's great stuff, man. Love the first John Wick. I love Willem Dafoe in the movie as well. He's great. So, yeah, that's it, guys. That is my ranking of all the movies in the 10 action Agent franchises. There you go. Hope you guys enjoy this video. There will be more like these coming in the future. I plan on doing a sci-fi edition of this where I will be ranking 10 sci-fi franchises in all the movies and in the franchises. That's going to be the next one I'm going to be working on. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Let me know in the comment section again how you would rank these movies, or if you just want to keep it short and simple, you can just rate the 10 franchises collectively together. That makes it easier on you. Thank you guys for tuning in, and until next time, you know what it is. Kick it and rock on.